You are watching K-Rights TV, where the truth continues.
Read biggest part of that book, and there's a lot of, especially when you doing some brilliant stuff in here. Hey, listen here, you guys with the traffic ticket out there. When you go in there, there's things you can say to the judge. You can ask the judge and the prosecuting attorney questions, and you can box them in. You're talking about how to box them in so they really can't wiggle much.
Well, they try. They try. They're pretty sneaky sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I typically do when I go in, I get the ticket. I don't believe in fighting. I don't believe in disagreeing. I don't believe in going in saying you don't have jurisdiction or you're this and you're not following the law. What I notice is that if I agree with them and just question them based on what they've already told me, it quickly falls apart. For example, what I like to do is I like to go in with a proposed plea of guilty. And anyone in the traffic case can plead guilty. That's generally the way. Yeah, it's generally the way they want it, though.
Yeah.
But you go in with the proposed. It's not signed. It just says, I have had my rights read. They have explained the nature and cause of the charges and proceedings to me, because I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand this, but they've informed me, and I'm waiving my right to appeal. And all you have to do is sign it at that point. As long as it's unsigned,
yeah, they can't do anything.
They can't do anything with it. So what I like to do is I like to go in and say, like I just said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand what's going on, but I would like to plead guilty. I don't want to have a trial. I like to avoid this whole thing. I got a life and I got a job, but I don't understand all the ins and outs. Okay, and as long as I can be informed, I'll be more than happy to pay your fine. Now this gets them pretty confident. Well, okay, what are your questions? And I said, well, all right, well, am I entitled to a fair trial? Oh, yes,
absolutely.
Yes, Mark, you're absolutely entitled to a fair trial.
That'll puff their chest up, won't it?
Yeah, we're fair in this court. We're fair. Well, that's great. And one of the things I'll ask is, am I entitled to a meaningful hearing? Oh, yes. So if I ask questions, I would expect that you'd be responsive. Oh, yes. And if there's something I don't understand, you'll do your best to explain it to me. Oh, yes. Okay, great. So one of the questions I'll ask then would be, am I presumed innocent of this alleged crime? And this is pretty basic. So, well, yeah, of course you are. All right. And I usually keep notes when I go. Okay, good, I'm presumed innocent. Well, am I presumed innocent of every element of this alleged crime? Now, this is where the problem starts. Now,
I'm laughing because I know the answer.
You go ahead. Well, he's already told me. He's already told me that yes, I am presumed innocent. Now I'm just asking him to be specific. What am I presumed innocent of? Am I presumed innocent of every element? Now, the last time this happened in Mesa, Arizona, the judge was the only lawyer in the room who was not laughing. All the lawyers behind me thought I was crazy. And this is not just prosecutors. This is also defense lawyers and public defenders who are supposed to be there to make sure that each defendant has his rights maintained and not violated. And I'm not there with a lawyer. So they're supposed to be even more giving, if you will. They're supposed to be a little bit more helpful to you, so you don't understand what's going on. So the judge looks at me. His name is. You're presumed innocent of the charge. Move on. Oh, no, I can't do that. I don't understand.
Don't understand the charge.
Don't understand. Just need a response of yes or no, sir. Am I presumed innocent of every element of this alleged crime? Like I said, the lawyers behind me are having a field day, making fun. I can hear the comments. One of them actually said, well, how many elements do you think there are? Well, I'll get to that. That's not my burden to know how many elements. That's the cop's job, or the prosecutor. So at this point, Robin is beet red. I mean, this judge, well, he's doing a bad job of pretending to be a judge. Oh, he was furious. At this point, you are presumed innocent of the charge. Move on. Sir, with all due respect, I can't move on. I don't understand. I need a responsive yes or no. Just yes or no. That's all he could take. That was it. Security was called in, and I was thrown out of court.
When something like that happens, for somebody sitting back in the bleachers and looking at that, and they don't understand a thing, they know something went wrong.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
Well, went wrong. Well, actually, nothing really.
For him.
For what went wrong for the prosecutor and the so-called judge. What happened for them was they boxed themselves in and actually made my case for me. Or rather, they showed that they didn't have a case. Because what they did was they admitted I was entitled to a fair hearing, and a meaningful one. They said that they would answer my questions responsibly, which they haven't done. They acknowledged that I'm not a lawyer and I don't understand. And they've acknowledged that I'm entitled to be informed.
And as long as you don't understand the charges, it's required by law for them to explain them to you.
Right, and they refuse to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I do explain to people in a peanut gallery, if they ask me, what just happened? Why did the judge get so upset with you? Why did he call security to have you taken out of the courtroom? You didn't raise your voice. You weren't disrespectful in any manner. What happened? And the reason is, to get a little bit more technical, is that jurisdiction is an essential element of any alleged crime. And if he has to presume me innocent of every element of that alleged crime, he has to presume there's no jurisdiction. He can't hold me for pretrial.
You know, that went fast. Say that again.
Okay.
If he has to assume that you're innocent of all aspects of the charge, he also...
Jurisdiction is an absolutely essential element of any crime or any court case. That's basically the judge's ability to hear the case at all, to hold you, if you will, against your will, in his room, his courtroom. So if he has already admitted that he has a presumption of innocence, that has to apply to every single element of the crime, or you're not presumed innocent. Well, as a matter of black letter law, if their jurisdiction is an absolutely essential element. If I wasn't in Arizona on the day the police officer says I was, or I wasn't within the state, to be more accurate, then there's no case. And I usually get them to admit that if I'm not within the state on that day, there is no case. There's no jurisdiction, there's no crime. So I make sure to get that admission first. So here, the judge, Robin Allen, was the only one in the room, besides myself, who understood what was going on. He understood, if I admit that he's presumed innocent of every single element of this alleged crime, I know this guy. He's going to come back and then say, are you presuming there's no jurisdiction? Now he's boxed into a corner. Because if he has to presume there's no jurisdiction, he can't hold me to answer for this ridiculous complaint against me. So this is why, to keep anyone in the peanut gallery from picking up the ball and thinking, hey.
Or everybody that's sitting behind you waiting to get in your chair.
Right. So to keep all those people from getting any ideas, I'm going to cut this guy off before anybody figures out what he's doing. Because apparently the lawyers are just out in left field. They're not getting it.
They couldn't catch it.
But maybe someone in the background is going to get this. And even if they don't get it, I don't want them coming up here and doing the same thing. So, oh, I know what I'll do. I'm going to start screaming, and I'm going to call security and have this man removed. And I'm going to just completely ignore everything I said about fairness and a fair trial and due process and justice and I mean. You can see if you just take a progression and get certain admissions from him. It's not that the law requires me to be informed. I didn't ask him, well, does the law require me to be informed? No, no. I asked him, am I entitled to be informed? And he gave me his opinion. So what I've noticed is that the law means nothing. If it gets in the way of a conviction, we're gonna ignore that. If you don't like it, appeal it. And that's the typical sneer that you get.
Absolutely.
Never mind that appeal is never forthcoming. They forget that part. Okay?
Oh, okay.
So trying to get them to contradict the law is really just...
It's difficult.
Well, you can do it all day long. It's difficult to actually get a case thrown out because they did contradict the law. Well, so what? If you don't like it, appeal it. But I noticed early on that it's very embarrassing to contradict yourself, especially when you're in a room full of people who respect you to a point that they will murder on your orders. And what I mean by murder, that they will use physical violence against you. The police officers or whoever the security is there, given the order, they will attack you.
Yeah.
There's no thought involved. They just follow the judge's orders. And I've had many, many experiences with police officers. And it's not an attack on police officers, but I've had many, many personal experiences where police officers have told me flat out, I follow the judge's orders. Yeah. It's not my job to question what the judge says. I just do what he tells me. One of the things I discuss in the book is that some of the most egregious, heinous acts that you can imagine have been justified because they were according to the law.
Legal.
It was legal.
Of course, the thing about it, though, is that a lot of things is happening here now that is not legal. It's contrary to both what it says in the statutes, in the codes, and the court rules.
That's correct. And one of the fallacies I bring up in the book is that people claim, politicians, and you can read it in books and history books, and you read about it in schools, that, well, the Constitution created a limited government of limited powers, and that if it goes beyond the scope of the Constitution, it's illegal or unconstitutional. Well, that is a lie, and I'll explain why. Because one of the most important phrases, the only really important phrase in the Constitution, is the necessary and proper clause. And and a lot of people like to say, hey, let's get back to the common law. Let's get back to that. Well, one of the things that comes out of the common law, which the Constitution is supposed to be read in light of, is a phrase called necessitas non habet legem, which most people have no idea what this means. Well, what it means is necessity has no law.
Okay.
Oh, what is it? Wow. So from the common law, which people think is a great thing, we have this rule of necessity. And it means that if some bureaucrat, whoever's doing it, let's say the bulldozing of a church, if someone deems it necessary, the one who ordered the bulldozing, oh, it was necessary, oh, it's good to go. And
almost as good as national security.
Yeah, and that fact, that's kind of two lies.
Yeah.
It's very, you have to look at politics, and politics is usually the only profession, if you will, where you can have two words, a two-word phrase, be two lies. One, that there's a nation, and two, that they have a duty to secure you or to provide protection.
Yeah.
So what I go through in the book is, one, there's no nation. And we can get into the details of that.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why there's no nation, why we can prove that there's no nation, is the security issue.
Okay.
What's the job of politicians? Why do we have bureaucrats? Why do we have government? Why do we have a so-called state? What is the purpose? What is it? Why is it there? Well, if we go to the Declaration of Independence, it tells us, and it says that governments were established or instituted to protect life, liberty, and property, or the pursuit of happiness. And that this is supposed to be by consent. And if we listen to what politicians tell us, what a citizen and a state and all these things are, we'll examine the citizen for a moment. And most people just figure, I was born here, I'm a citizen, but they really don't go into exactly what it is. Well, what is a citizen? What makes me a citizen and somebody who crosses over from Mexico or Canada, or comes in from some other country, what separates them from me? And a citizen, as told by the Supreme Court in Laurie versus United States, and I'm not going to bog us down in too much of the legalese, they say that it is a member of a body politic who owes allegiance in return for a duty of protection. And Laurie uses very specific words and says that these are reciprocal obligations. Now, lawyers will know, and anybody familiar with contract law, they're talking about a contract. In fact, in the Dartmouth College case and many other cases, the Supreme Court has ruled and never been overturned that citizenship is a contractual relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a duty of allegiance in return for a duty of protection. They're reciprocal. Okay? They work together hand in hand. You do this for me, I do that for you. Now we know allegiance is the only thing that ties you to their so-called law. You agree to follow their laws in return for the protection.
So with other words, there is no citizens.
Well, there's got to be a reason why.
Yeah.
You don't want to, I don't want to just, you just don't, well, give me some evidence, give me some reason why you're saying this. Well, we know if a citizen says, I renounce my allegiance, he's not entitled to any protection.
Right.
He's on his own. This is pretty common. People expatriate, they do it all the time. They come from Canada and they become citizens. They have to abrogate their allegiance and to the foreign potentiate or king or minister, whatever. Well, what I did was I looked at the other side. Well, what if the other side of a contract, this reciprocal obligation situation, what if the other side says, you know what, I'm going to cut you off. I'm not going to protect you. In fact, even if I say I'm going to protect you, I'm not going to allow you to hold me accountable if I don't. I'm going to say sovereign immunity, that's right. I have sovereign immunity, so even if I did have a duty, a technical duty to protect you, for which you pay taxes for, if I don't protect you and I breach that duty, you're not going to be able to hold me accountable. See, it's similar to a so-called congressman. A so-called congressman can never be held accountable for anything he does in office to his so-called constituents. So he really doesn't represent them.
That's right.
Okay, so in this particular case, what I saw, and there was a case here out of Arizona, went to the Arizona Supreme Court. There was I believe it was out of Hill County, and a man owned a jewelry store. And what he did was he contracted with off-duty Gila County sheriff's deputies to protect his store. The alarm goes off, you guys show up, and you protect my store. Well, they didn't fulfill their duty. And his alarm went off. He lost $250,000. I believe it was about $250,000 worth of merchandise. This is in the mid-50s. I believe it was the mid-50s. Well, he sued the sheriff's deputies, these off-duty officers. And believe it or not, the Superior Court said, their lawyers, I guess, filed a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim, because a cause of action is a breach of a duty that results in loss, harm, or injury. And they said, you have not pled a duty. They don't have a duty to protect.
That's right, I was going at you.
So this guy figured, wait a minute, no, I guess, no, he appealed this. He said, no, this can't be right. Well, it gets to the Arizona Supreme Court, and in a brief moment of lucidity and common sense and reason, which really hasn't returned too many times, the Supreme Court said, you're right. As sheriff's deputies on the job, there's no duty to protect him or anyone else. But this was different. You had contractual obligation. You had a private contract. You were not on the job. You were not Gila County Sheriff's deputies. You had a contractual obligation, and you breached it, and you cost this guy $250,000. And they sent it back to the Superior Court for trial. And I looked at that and I said, well, wait a minute. If a citizen is only a citizen because he owes a duty of allegiance in return for a duty of protection, and they're openly and notoriously saying, we don't have a duty to protect you, even though the Constitution says in Article 1, Section 2, the only purpose is to protect. Okay. There's no duty to protect. There's no duty of allegiance. Well, if there's no duty to protect and no duty of allegiance due, then there are no citizens.
And because there's no contract.
Right. And if there are no citizens, there's no body politic. And if there's no body politic, there's no state. If there's no state, there's no United States. There's no nation. So basically what you have is 280 million people who are just people.
And treated like we are because we don't know any better.
We're treated like we are because we've been bought into this public relations scheme, this matrix, if you will, that has been forced on us. And I spoke to some people yesterday on a radio show, and they, well, what's wrong with our reality? You know, why can't we're happy with our reality? I said, well, you know, you can be, I'm happy with my reality. And I don't have a problem with the reality anyone takes. You can sit in your house and think you're King Henry. But the moment you pick up a gun and you use a gun or any other kind of force to get me to join your reality, that is where the problem comes in. Have whatever reality you want. Think you're Santa Claus. Great. Run with it. Don't pick up a gun to get your kids to believe it. Don't pick up a gun to get your neighbors to believe it. And don't pick up a gun to get your neighbors to pay for your delusion. Take your delusion, like, you know, take your delusion and run with it. Just keep the core. Because even though we may not believe we're citizens, if you don't act as if you're a citizen, you run the risk of being murdered.
Right.
You could take any situation. If you decide, I don't accept you as my governor, or I don't accept you as an authority because I have no agreement with you, and I'm not going to listen to you, and no, I'm not going to stop driving my car peacefully down the street. Well, we all know if we're driving peacefully down the street, or traveling, however you want to say it, and you're not endangering anybody, but you don't have that tax ID number on the back of your car, which is the license plate, you will get a cop eventually, a police officer, who will get behind you, and he will throw his emergency lights. There's no emergency, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, there's never an emergency, but he has to check things out. You don't have the tax ID number. Now, the officer doesn't know that's a tax ID, that you've paid your tax. All he knows is, I was told you don't have a plate, you got to have a plate, I got to stop this person. And what if you choose, no, I'm not gonna stop. I don't accept your reality. You don't have to accept mine. It's fine. I'm not taking a gun to your head and making you accept my reality. But this police officer, his reality is now going to become yours.
Yes. Very good.
And we've seen enough shows, cops, we've seen enough shows that if you don't stop that car, what are they going to do? And I'm not saying you're speeding. You're not endangering anybody. What is the police officer going to do? More than likely, he's going to call backup.
Start roadblocks and
He's
start
gonna
all
get,
kinds of things.
right, and he's probably going to do that ram maneuver where they hit your car. What is he going to do from that point? Is he going to walk up to your car? Hi, notice you didn't have a license plate. You didn't stop when I put the lights on. Everything okay? No. The gun has already come off. It's pointed directly at your head, and he's screaming at you to get out of the car. Now, who is the one who's the threat to somebody's safety in this point? Is the man who's just traveling, minding his own business and keeping to his own reality, or is it the police officer who's trying to get you to join his reality? However, I have been successful in impeaching every single cop. And this is not an attack on cops, they're not taught these things. And initially, you know, I would ask questions, not just on a tax issue, I would also ask, is it your testimony that I was within the state on this day? Oh, yeah. Or would there be a case, or would there be jurisdiction or a crime if I was not within the state on this particular day? Oh, no, not at all. So you're confident I was within the state on this day? Yes. Okay, is that an arbitrary opinion? No. So it's based on facts within your knowledge? Oh, yeah. And they're currently within your knowledge? Oh, yes. So, and then I would just say, well, factually, what is a state? And
now they go blank on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
a lot of them will admit it. I have no idea. Most of the time, the judge and the prosecutor, who are really
Jump
both,
right up.
they're jumping up. They got to protect their client. They both actually represent this police officer. So they jump up, and it's the same stupid, rehearsed objection I've heard so many times. Objection calls for a legal conclusion. The witness can't testify. Thank you. You just finished my job. You just impeached your own witness. Because what does the ticket consist of? He made a legal opinion. You broke the law. He's already admitted and given legal opinions.
Yeah.
And like I write in the book, when the officer first gets on the stand, he'll go through his testimony and he will give legal opinions. And I will, just to set him up, Objection, calls for a legal conclusion, the witness can't testify. Now what does the judge do? Well, he's got to have the cop testify. Didn't, you know, overruled. Okay, and you're right that he's letting the cop give legal opinions, not a problem. Now I know when I get to my turn to cross-examine him, I will purposely get him into this corner.
Use the same thing.
And I will bring, and so the prosecutor, this lawyer who pretends to represent the state, he will jump up right on cue, as they always do. Objection, calls for a legal conclusion, the witness is not competent to testify. Now I understand that, you know, this has a tendency to really aggravate the cop, and what good reason? This prosecutor is his lawyer. How dare he come into court and say he's not competent?
He's not competent, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't want him to tell the truth, would you?
Oh, of course. Well, they don't. Yeah, they don't want the officer to say, I don't know. I don't know. Now, people have said to me, well, can't the officer just say it's the ground? Sure he can. Now he's got to tell me, because I'm entitled to be informed. I'm entitled to confront my accuser and demand the nature and cause of the charges and proceedings. Now he has to tell me who the prosecutor represents.
Okay.
Big problem if he's representing the ground. I don't have to explain to people that that's ridiculous.
Yeah, what's the difference between the ground and the state of Arizona?
And I have had several judges in Mesa tell me, and of course they're testifying on behalf of the police officer at this point. Well, Mark, the state is an act of Congress that was passed in 1910 and created the state of Arizona. But he's not testifying. He saw me within an act of Congress. You can see just how ridiculous the whole situation is. And if it's the ground, then, excuse me, are you telling me that there was a state of Arizona prior to 1909?
Okay.
And now we got a problem because that, when was that 48th star added? Oh, that's right. The 48th star was added to your flag in 1912.
Yeah.
Because there was no state of Arizona prior to that, prior to January 1912. It just wasn't there. So it's not the ground. It is absolutely, positively not the ground. It couldn't be the ground.
That's right.
Because the prosecutor is not representing a geographical area.
Of course, putting it to him that way, then you will destroy his testimony.
Well, absolutely. That's why they will. That's why the more astute prosecutors will not allow the officer to even attempt to answer the question because they know it's just too deep a hole. But what I started doing is, I don't want it to look like I'm attacking police officers and trying to get them declared incompetent. Because I never say that they're incompetent. I want them to testify. It's their lawyers and the judges trying to protect their little case. So I decided, well, why don't I, they don't, I figured they're just not learning this stuff. They're not learning it in the police academy. It's just not something you do in a traffic case. So what I started doing, I said, well, look, I'm not gonna do it this way. I don't want to go to trial. Why waste time going to trial? So I started right at the arraignment. I want to plead guilty. I want to get it over with. So one of the questions I would put to the prosecutor. Instead of the police officer, I'll put it to the prosecutor. He's the one claiming to represent the state. So what I started doing was a standard legal challenge. In civil rules, it's Rule 9A. It's the same in the federal. And I would ask a simple question. Again, not saying that there's no state. Don't want to come off as combative. You're not argumentative. You're not taking a position. I would say, is there evidence of a complaining party here? And this is the typical response from a lawyer pretending to represent the state.
Oh, yeah. He's got to come up with something really fast.
Right. This is his job. This is his job. See, when he does that, that's a cue to his fellow lawyer with the robe. You got to help me here. So we had a case in Maine where this happened. And he turned beet red, the prosecutor, and that's what he's doing, and shuffling his papers furiously, and the judge jumps in. Well, sir, that's easy. It's the state of Maine. And the defendant says, objection, move to strike. I believe that's non-responsive. I wanted a yes or no. And two, Rule 605 of the Rules of Evidence doesn't permit you to testify on behalf of a prosecutor. Well, the judge wasn't happy at all with this. Not happy at all.
Yeah, you don't want to be challenged.
No. And he just made this judge look kind of ridiculous.
Stupid.
Stupid. So what happened was, and this is a criminal case, they bound him, the judge was furious. Bound to God, yeah, you're going to trial. You're not pulling this in my court. You're going to trial. All right. So file a motion to dismiss for a failure to prosecute. Look, we have one question. One question, or just give me a yes or no. Is there evidence of a complaining party? I mean, your burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. You got to have some evidence here. So you're either concealing it from me if you don't answer, or you don't have any. No real gray area there. So we get into, the man gets into the hearing, and the judge says, would you like to speak to the prosecutor before we have this hearing? Ah, sure, why not? He goes out in the hallway, says to the prosecutor, well, how about it? Can you answer the question? No. No, and that's stupid. I don't even think it's relevant. We'll let the judge decide. It's not the judge's burden.
No.
So he said, you know what? I don't care how you want to play this. But I'll tell you what. I'm looking at a year in jail. I'm going to ask the cop the same question on the stand. Because they give him a jury in Maine still. It's not a complete joke like it is here in Arizona where you don't get a jury. They want to put you in jail. Ah, no jury. He says, I'm going to ask the cop the same question on the stand. Right in front of the jury. I'm going to embarrass the heck out of both of you. It's your call. Well, I'll let the judge, I'll just let the judge decide. Because, you know, they're buddies. They work for the same team.
Right.
So they get in there, and the judge said, no hearing. Motion to dismiss denied. You're going to trial. We're going to get a jury on such and such a day, blah, blah. And he stands up. I have an objection. Well, what's your objection? I haven't got discovery yet. It's one question. Is there evidence of a complaining
Yeah, that's
party?
right. Discovery doesn't have to be in writing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have my discovery, and the judge... All right. Says to the prosecutor, you've got 10 days to give this man his discovery. I have no choice but to dismiss it. Well, what do you think happened on day 11? Prosecutor withdrew all the charges. Now, I have the dismissal, the order of dismissal, because he filed his motion to dismiss and the judge granted it. So I have an order of dismissal that it was dismissed with prejudice. With prejudice.
Means it can't come back.
Right. So it's not a matter of, oh, Mr. Prosecutor, you just need some time to bring your evidence. No, you have no evidence.
Yeah.
And you know it. And I know it. And I don't want this guy coming in and saying this in front of a jury. Okay? Because he's clearly willing to go to jail to ask this question. And the jury's going to hear it. And they're going to wonder why I'm putting a man in jail for asking a question.
What are some of the other issues that you're dealing with in this book that maybe someone could have an advantage of by reading?
Well, what I try to do in the book is not so much, it's not really a self-help how to navigate the courts. What I wanted to do is I wanted to help people clear their mind, and I wanted people to be able to think more clearly. I wanted the matrix, if you will, or the cloud, the public relations. I wanted to strip through all the public relations so that people, if they are attacked, can see things as they are. When someone says they got a traffic ticket, that a police pulled them over and they got a traffic ticket, that's not what I see. What I see is I see a man with a gun who doesn't respect this person's rights and is going to take control of his life and property without his consent. And that's important because they put themselves out as, benevolent protectors of life, liberty, and property. But if they're protecting life, liberty, and property, why are they taking control of your life and property without your consent? I think if you can see through all the legalese, like when the IRS attacks you, when they say that you have a tax liability and they're going to take your house, all that's happening is you have a group of men and women who cannot do business on a voluntary basis. They can't provide a product like a book or something else or a TV show. They can't do that and offer the service or the product on a voluntary basis. So what they're doing is they're taking your property by force. They're not revenue agents. They're just guys with guns taking your property. So you look at what's happening and compare it to the rhetoric. Take their nonsense, what they say to you. I represent the state. Well, don't fight him on that. Don't assume, oh, okay, he represents the state. What you do is you know that there is no such thing as a state. It's a figment of the imagination.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, and even lawyers will tell you it's a body corporate, which is just a figment of the imagination. And so instead of looking at him as an agent of the state, he's a man who represents nobody but himself, who's taken your property by force. And if you just question him, don't fight him, don't say, hey, are you not this? You have no right. You ask him, well, what is a state? Or you say, well, exactly, factually, how was this obligation created? I don't want your opinion. Don't tell me the law. I already, we got your opinion. Give me the facts. And a lot of people say, well, what do you mean facts? Well, one of the examples I use in the book is if I scream, I'm going to kill you, and then I take a chair and I break it over your back. Those are the facts. The opinion is that I committed assault and battery.
Yeah.
But if I just say assault and battery, I'm not telling you anything.
Right.
You're guilty of assault and battery. What did I do? Assault and battery. What did I do?
Could be absolutely anything.
There are hundreds of thousands of different ways that you can commit assault and battery. You're not giving me the facts.
Right.
So if they say, the law creates this obligation, well, okay, you've got your opinion. I committed assault and battery. But what facts do you base it on? Well, you committed assault and battery. Give me some facts.
Yeah.
And this is all the assessments, so-called assessments, that I have helped get thrown out, and tickets that have been thrown out have been because all I did was ask for the facts the opinions were based on. But it is available at adventuresinlegaland.com. You can also write to me at Post Office Box 31258, Mesa, Arizona, 85275-1258. The easiest way is to go to adventuresinlegaland.com. If you have a PayPal account.
This was fun.
Thank you. It was a blast.
Yeah, educational, and boy do I need it. Good night. Right there.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Don't care if I die. Don't ever leave me. Don't ever say goodbye. Come on, Chris, give it to me now. Don't ever leave me, don't ever say goodbye.
preserve, protect, and defend.
Support and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Powers that be. Powers that be. Powers that be. Powers that be.
State-sanctioned kidnapping is when a state agency unlawfully removes a child or senior from a family's care by illegally editing court hearing tapes or manipulating the court files.
Victims of state-sanctioned child abductions.
It's difficult to believe how easily and quickly children are removed from their parents without any show of wrongdoing.
This amounts to nothing more than a state-sanctioned kidnapping.
Dockets are doctored.
The transcripts had been altered.
Fabricated medical evidence.
Tapes edited.
The altering of trial audio tapes.
The audio tapes were criminally edited.
Transcript tapes were edited.
Judges fixing transcripts.
Victims of false allegations of abuse.
Evidence of police wrongdoing, of edited tapes, of manufactured evidence.
The evidence is being manufactured.
Father proves courts edit tapes to remove the evidence that goes against the judge's ruling.
Okay.
They know what they're doing. And for them to pretend that they don't know that the records are being altered, these are not stupid people.
This is not just overzealous officials claiming to err on the side of caution for children's welfare. This is a systematic confiscation of children from their parents.
The desire to protect children, of course, is a noble desire. However, what this has turned into is an industry.
We'll tell your mama, we'll tell your pa, we're gonna send you back to Harvard Law.
The stories you've seen here may seem fantastic. In fact, they are very common and almost routine.
There's no penalty for government lawyers who incite their witnesses to commit perjury.
There's absolute immunity for prosecutors that could make conduct illegal and prosecute with the full force of government to create crimes.
A new set of crimes. It creates civil orders without rights, without your rights because you weren't there.
We often have what's called an ex parte hearing. That means one where only one side goes in and the other side doesn't get any notice, has no idea that there's a hearing going on, and doesn't even show up because they don't know what's happening.
And the incestuous nature sort of how the courts and the custody evaluators and the party that's being favored by those professionals in the court system kind of collaborate together.
Children, but in some cases the elderly, are effectively confiscated by court officials. Their estates are plundered.
I was put on trial by federal court.
I was sentenced to 6 months in jail.
And I faced a relentless series of charges.
Just two words: federal money.
So the incentive is not to keep the child in the home.
What you have now in this country is a situation where the judiciary and the bar are working together to run a criminal racketeering enterprise that is extorting money from people under color of office.
The courts are a criminal enterprise to get money, federal dollars, from the federal government.
The entire justice system has basically collapsed.
Is this a racketeering scheme? It certainly is. It's racketeering, it's extortion, there's a whole bunch of crimes that are going on. And you have judges that are accountable to no one.
We're standing in front of the Billerica House of Correction where I was wrongly incarcerated for most of the 5.5 months until my mother was able to remortgage the house to come up with the $50,000 cash bail that was required.
If you don't pay us this $150 per hour for the next 5 years, we're going to take the kid away from you. That's a little bit more of an extortionistic demand, because that results in money going directly into the pockets of the private individuals and agencies, who are benefiting from this public process and using their authority as governmental agents to extort money out of a parent.
I not only discovered that the courts edited hearing tapes, but I discovered the motivation behind their doing these criminal acts, and that is massive federal funding.
The entire judicial system is corrupt.
They lost for gold. Your vote is sold. Take back the soul of our nation.
What they do is they offer the state a bribe or a federal incentive to be involved and conduct themselves in such a manner.
Well, does it create statistics? Is it meant, I don't know that it's meant to create statistics, but it creates cases. And if cases create grants, then so be it.
For every child who is removed from the family home, there are 25 service providers who derive their livelihood from that child's removal. They have a vested interest in maintaining their income. They have a vested interest in maintaining their practice.
Child abuse by public officials.
The worst abuse I've experienced is at the hands of the government, and the worst abuse my child has experienced is at the hands of the government. That's the only abuse that's going on here.
Just to get the word out to the public, I filed a lawsuit against the State Bar for racketeering.
I reported case fixing, criminal activity in a court, and I have done 231 days in jail for basically reporting crimes.
And the consequence was that in secret tribunals, I lost my law license. They took it away, and they would not give me a public trial of the matter.
I had my license to practice law suspended without a hearing.
All total, I was arrested 26 times and prosecuted. Literally thrown in jail and prosecuted.
I'm attorney Eugene Rona, a Pennsylvania attorney who is in the process of being disbarred by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania because I accuse the courts of criminal misconduct for the alteration of court proceeding.
These courts operate in secrecy. They are accountable to virtually no one. They usually leave no record at all of their proceedings.
I had to be silenced through serious discrediting. In other words, discredit me, this former Girl Scout in every sense of the word, by making me a criminal.
They wanted to do anything to see that I didn't win cases.
Lawyers who merely reported that their clients' tapes were illegally edited, boom, they're gone. Yeah. They're terrorized, they're beaten, they're thrown in jail. If I've been beaten, I've been thrown in jail unlawfully, I've been fined $20,000 unlawfully, and I've witnessed other political activists like myself who want to expose this being thrown in jail unlawfully.
And then finally, doing everything you could to psychologically destroy me so that I couldn't assist other people and extract what funds I have so that I couldn't defend myself.
June Maxim, the other speakers, and I are being victimized by domestic terrorists. Domestic enemies of the Constitution who use terror tactics to destroy and suppress all who oppose them.
Tear up the news. Party line views. Replace with your senses.
You have got to talk to your neighbors, because the media, they're not going to report on it.
Kevin Thompson, whose book on judicial corruption in Massachusetts has been banned.
And this federal funding is having a terribly corruptive effect on journalists, on academics, on prosecutors, on court officials of all kinds.
I found out that every time I exposed public corruption or white-collar crime, the people who I exposed faced no charges, and I faced a relentless series of charges.
The press is biased, and your story does not come out. The true story does not come out.
Our boys are fighting to bring freedom and justice in foreign lands, while here at home it is being stripped from us. Right.
It's a trick played on all of us.
Why would courts and judges do this sort of a thing? The answer to that question is just two words: federal money.
And they just simply created this statute, created all these committees, created these jobs, created these industries, and no one's going to stop them because there's no one to stop them.
So there is an industry completely built up around the redistribution of our children. Who gets the checks for the services that are offered? It's not the parents, and it's not the child. It's the service providers.
I'm here in Washington, D.C. today to ask the federal government why federal funds are available to the legal industry to prey on society's weakest members: our elderly, our handicapped, our mentally challenged, and our children.
This court system is riddled with abuses, with corruption, with graft. Children are effectively walking bundles of cash. Whoever controls the children can get money from the federal government.
The legislature, the judiciary, the legal system lusts after these federal funds.
The federal government is the locomotive driving this whole thing. They're taking otherwise normal courts and they're adding fuel in the form of federal money to subsidize certain actions that they want to see happen.
They ended up creating an industry. An industry. People getting arrested without a hearing and things of that nature, and all having to do with the change in the law.
Judges gave themselves immunity for their decisions, as long as those decisions were not malicious or corrupt. A few years later, the court took the malicious and corrupt away.
Judges have given themselves immunity. Are you aware of that?
I read that about...
absolute immunity. Yeah. They've given lawyers qualified immunity. And in my case, Margaret Marshall used my case to rewrite the anti-SLAPP law to give social workers who commit perjury in court immunity. And the immunity, which are totally un-American, we're all supposed to be equal before the law, but they've made themselves into an aristocracy that operates above the law.
The judges had created immunity. They had created such a thing called sovereign immunity, and I'd look at the Constitution and I'd say, how can you come up with this thing called sovereign immunity where the government is not accountable to the people? How can that happen? There's not a word of it in the Constitution. In fact, the whole idea of the Constitution is the government should be accountable to the people.
How does judicial immunity jive with the concept, the constitutional concept, that all men are equal before the law?
And if you want to continue to have a relationship with your child, you do as we say, or we'll take your child away.
The harm that they do to the children of our nation, that's incredible. You're talking tens of thousands of children being harmed by these judges' actions just so they can collect money from Washington.
When they interfere with the family unit, undermine parental authority, and substitute state decisions for parent decisions, that is going to be the beginning of the destruction of our society.
Justice! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Is it a big leap to consider that these people who are doing unconstitutional and illegal acts to empower themselves and industries, the legal industries that they belong to, is it a big stretch to really think that they would go so far as to edit tapes?
I guess not.
How can you have a government and all of its little governors being immune at the same time have a right to petition government for redress?
We'll be handing out some flyers trying to raise some awareness and bring some exposure to the sedition and treason that takes place daily in our courtrooms.
Isn't there anybody with a conscience in our judicial system or our government?
Well, the more I asked, the more I saw that it was somehow buried in the field of law and the people, the governed, their inability to control the government.
Thomas Jefferson warned us all that the biggest danger to America isn't from abroad, it's from within, and it's from the judiciary. He, a lawyer, points out that the judiciary is the greatest threat to our democracy. And he's turned out to be more than correct.
More than, yeah.
Yeah.
Come back! Baby, come back! Come back! Baby, please come back!
The courts are a criminal enterprise to get money, federal dollars, from the federal government.
Hi, my name is Larry Rattan. If you give me 6 minutes, I'm going to prove to you and legislators that divorce laws have little or no meaning. Legislators work very hard to give us fair laws, but they have been tricked into including some detrimental language. You think the law tells the judges to evaluate each person, what they have contributed, then make an equitable separation of the marriage. You will plainly see how these so-called laws can easily be ignored. The results have been a goldmine for the justice system and a disaster for divorcing couples. This is not a male and female issue. Many women pay alimony to their exes until they die. Some of those exes work very little or not at all to support themselves. To eliminate the gender aspect, I'm going to use worker for the income provider and ex for the secondary or non-provider. I'm going to show you an actual case. Then I'm going to explain how and why I think the grossly lopsided decisions happen. This is not about one case. This is one example of how thousands have been unfairly victimized by the justice system. At trial, this case revealed the following facts about the ex and the worker. The ex admitted in court that they had an affair, then asked for a divorce. They said their spouse was good. They secretly took money from a marital account for their private accounts. They collected unemployment for being fired. Later, they said they were not fired. And then they said they didn't need to help with the family business because they were employees. Discovered in court about the worker was that the worker was declared absolutely honest by the neutral forensic CPA. The worker asked the ex to help with the family business. The worker provided overwhelming evidence that they were the driving force of the family's success. And the worker helped raise the ex's child from a previous marriage. That's a pretty good accurate snapshot of the people involved in this divorce. Now, here's what the judge ruled was a fair settlement. The judge said the ex will get the beach home and the worker will pay both mortgages and current taxes. Number 2 is very important. The ex can work a part-time minimum wage job that is lower than the lowest level set by the vocational evaluator and far below the $33,000 job possibility. The worker will pay the ex $1,800 a month alimony for the rest of their life. Continuing on, number 4, the judge said the ex will be freed from all marital debt. The worker will pay all $1,115,000 in debt and $728,000 in interest. It'll take 30 years to pay this off. Number 5 and 6 is very important. Number 5, the worker will pay the ex $240,000 cash settlement instead of $91,000. The lower amount would share the workload and bills. The judge ruled that the ex needed $240,000 with no bills or work. The worker asked to pay on $240,000 instead of alimony. The judge said no. The ex needed $240,000 and alimony. Continuing on, number 7, the judge ruled that the worker will get the family boat, but the ex had the boat seized and sold at auction to pay on the $240,000. The ex got the boat at a bargain price. The worker will get 2 businesses, but one business was forced to be sold to pay on the $240,000. The worker got the beach triplex that was 200% underwater, and the worker got a home near work that was 100% financed. Anyone can see that this is a very lopsided decision. The ex is given a life of luxury, the worker is forced into overwhelming debt, work, and pays alimony until they die. This is how the law gets twisted. This is the divorce law 6108 concerning alimony. If you look at the law, it looks very fair and equitable to both sides. But if you look closely, you're going to see a lot of little words like may, can, and consider. Here are some of those words that I've highlighted. I call these qualifiers because they actually cancel out the words that follow. Those are the words orange highlighted in this page, right, that actually mean nothing. In other words, the judge may or may not follow the law. People soon find out that they are dealing with the judge's whim, not the law. Why some judges produce lopsided settlements might have something to do with money. Most people don't realize that lawyers can give money directly to judges. They call it a campaign donation. A big donation will affect a person's decisions. Judges are not saints. They're lawyers in robes. Money might explain another odd aspect about divorces. Some divorces last 5 or 6 years, while murder trials last 2 or 3 months. Murder trials are complicated. A divorce is basically cutting a pie in half. Do lawyers and judges intentionally drag out trials to produce big profits? Let's follow the money. divorcing couples have to pay lawyers, and lawyers give money to judges. And then not only that, to these two particular lawyers, but you'll find out that there's a whole squadron of lawyers that pay money to judges. So it's not in the interest of any of these judges or this lawyer, or this, lawyers and judges to stop a case early, to finish early. They have every reason to want to make a case last as long as they possibly can. And sooner or later, what's going to happen is the judge says, well, I'm overwhelmed. My caseload is just overwhelmed. So I'm going to need some more judges to help me with this. And along with more judges comes some more secretaries, court reporters, and they got to have some sheriffs to protect them from all these decisions that they make. All of this because these two entities are allowed to just take their time at trial. Judges and lawyers have no incentive to wrap up a case. They do have every incentive to keep a case going as long as they can. The last why for lopsided decisions might be because they start a whisper campaign. A 30-year study from Brown University proved this to be 74% successful. The lucky person with the big settlement tells all their friends, neighbors, and possibly your spouse how great a divorce is. The judge allows them to sit around with little or no responsibilities and collect alimony from their exes until they die. This is a walking, talking advertisement that unknowingly spreads the great benefits of a divorce. I hope legislators can see that the current system is seriously broken. Please, do not allow the judicial branch to tell you what you can and cannot do. They are experts at twisting your words into profits for themselves. You make the rules. Every time you give up your power, you make your job less important. Please, do not vote yourself out of existence. Thank you very much.